Hello, everybody, and welcome to Conservation Technology Chats. I'm here again with Dr. Miriam Kunde, who is telling us all about her experience working with camera traps. And last episode, we heard very good basic camera trap information. I'm interested in what other uses we have for camera traps, maybe especially with working with cats. I know you worked on the Clouded Leopard project in Borneo.
If you want to work with cats, a lot of the cats have their individual pelt pattern. You also want to have cameras that face each other so that you get the pelt pattern from both
Right.
sides, from both flanks, right? So there you also have to experiment a little bit how you get them to face each other without constantly triggering each other. So it's a bit of experimenting with it. False trigger with camera traps can be a problem. So you need to make sure that you test your cameras before you put them out in the field, that there's no vegetation that can trigger them if it's a camera that's triggered by movement. But if you have cameras that face each other, sometimes the flashlight from one will, so if you have one false trigger, it quite often triggers the other camera too. So you need to test your cameras first. And then it depends on the weather conditions or the field conditions you're in. If you're in the tropicals, if you're anywhere hot and humid, technology tends to fail on you quite frequently. So there will get moisture that gets into the camera traps, or ants will build their nests in the camera traps. All of these things can happen. Another thing you have to consider is it is a trap site, and usually any human activity will deter animals from moving there. So once you start trapping in an area, you can't help but you alterate the habitat a little bit. And for shy or animals that are known to have been prosecuted through hunting, they become very wary of these scenarios. So you kind of, if you do set up camera traps, you don't want to visit the camera site too often. So some animals seem to be completely oblivious to this, like bearded pigs, for example. They are hunted like you wouldn't believe it because they're a very popular meat source. And I would go to the trap sites daily or every second day, to rebait and make sure everything's ready for when we start trapping pigs. And I have on camera traps that sometimes 5 minutes after I've let they came in. So they were not, despite being hunted, they were not shy, despite human disturbance. So again, it depends on your species and what you want to work with.
Yeah, I've seen quite
Some
a few from tigers where the first trap is a tiger walking by and the next photo is a tiger's face in the camera trap. What are you? So,
I mean, for us, we always think, they're camouflage. You barely see them against the tree, but a lot of animals are not visual. They sense, they smell the camera. It's very obvious to them anyway. It doesn't matter if it's bright pink, red. It's not necessarily the visuals that gives it away. It's just the fact that suddenly they can smell people there quite frequently. That becomes a disturbed site. The longer you can leave it be, the better. But that means there's a risk attached to it, right? You can always run out of battery. You can run out of SD card space. The camera can start to malfunction. And a lot of the times you will only really notice this once you retrieve the cameras. This is why the more the merrier, because you will have camera traps that have issues. Camera traps have problems. It's not the silver bullet, but it's a very useful tool, best used in a combination with other methods.
so definitely some things to consider when working with camera traps and using them with other methods too. Um, I would really love if you could tell our audience about your experience with the Sun Bear project because that's one of my favorite camera trap stories that you've told me. Yeah.
Yeah. We wanted to do a similar population study that you can do for cats, where you have the pelt pattern. We wanted to try that for sun bears. So we tried to replicate a study that a colleague of mine has done in Tabin. So Tabin is a large forest block which is saturated with sun bears. You can find sun bear signs everywhere in Tabin. So there's a lot of sun bears there. And what he's done, he's done a double whammy, because sun bears have got really short, thick pelt. So he tried different hair snagging methods for genetic analysis, but because the fur is so short, usually it doesn't get caught up by wire. So he tried them to scent rub. So in this case, you need 3 cameras for one site, which you space in a particular distance to a rubbing tree. And the idea is that there's space that they can detect the bear or the chest, and whether it's a female or a male, so the whole abdomen and kind of like the torso area, when he's standing upright and scratches. So I always stood in because I am actually roughly the height of a sun bear when I stand up. So I am my target species. So I would then sort of pretend I'm rubbing, and I tried to trigger the camera. You have to not be shy when you camera trapping. I probably had you crawl on your all fours when I wanted you to trigger the flat-headed cats, right?
Yep, you did.
Yeah, become the height of a flat-headed cat. Become the flat-headed cat. Yeah. So I tried to do that with the sun bears. I tried to replicate that study where he used balatchan in fish. So it's gross. It's gross, but what you do for conservation is you just get right into it, and you just coat the whole rubbing tree in that stinky paste and then hope that there's scent mark on it. It worked a treat in Taban. The bears in the Kinabatangan could not have cared less. That's something you have to remember too, because it's such a different environment, the Kinabatangan. It's surrounded by oil palm plantations. It's surrounded by very fatty, rich food all year round. Taban is primary forest or secondary forest, far removed from the next plantation in a forest that is not very productive. So animals are a lot more responsive to bait than they were around the Kinabatangan. So a lot of the projects do depend on what the habit. The bears behave differently in different environments, and that is something that you also learn with camera trapping. You learn just as much by what doesn't work than by what did work. This is just another example how you can use camera traps, is if you want to bring out nest boxes and you want to see which nest box design work, right? So we've had different nest boxes because hornbills need hollow cavities. They're not excavating and they're not making hollow cavities like a woodpecker. They can't do that. So they need already hollow cavities, and a lot of those hollow cavity spaces of those big trees, they're no longer there anymore. So we wanted to set up nest boxes for hornbills, and we attached video camera traps in front of them. And that was such a good example that hornbills and video cameras, or hornbills and camera traps, is a bad idea because they're very aware of the cameras and they usually have a go at them and peck them to bits. And whatever they haven't finished, the squirrels for sure will finish off for you. So a lot of animals, if you camera trap, be okay with losing a lot of cameras. Just know that you will have them malfunctioning and that animals will destroy them and that people might steal it. So know that there is a loss, and that's why it's also expensive.
Would you say that you have more successes or failures or learning experiences when it comes to working with camera traps?
I have probably just as many, maybe even more failures from camera trapping than I had successes. Do share what didn't work. Do share when it went wrong. Don't be afraid to speak up if you've done something that didn't work or messed up a study. But the big success that I could log for mine was that we actually did detect flat-headed cats, that we knew that they were in the area. And then it was the trial and error, trying to find a way to increase the likeliness of being able to detect the species on camera traps.
That is so awesome. Miriam, I want to thank you so much for taking the time to talk to me about all your camera trapping experiences. I know there's so much more to say, but this is a great start for anybody who's thinking about using camera traps or considering what the benefits and challenges are to using them. So thank you very much, Miriam.
It was great chatting to you.
Yes, you too.